Welcome to Cold War Conversations, the home of real stories of the Cold War.
And there were a lot of people over there on the hills with their cars, and outside on top of the car, they used to put a small black and white TV. I used to watch the World Cup from Mexico over there with the Hungarian television because they used to broadcast all these events.
This is Cold War Conversation.
Thanks to financial supporter Greg Whitehead for providing this week's introduction. If you're new here, you've come to the right place to listen to first-hand Cold War history accounts. Do make sure you follow us in your podcast app so you don't miss future episodes. Traian grew up in Romania during the tumultuous 1980s under the shadow of the communist regime led by Nicolae Ceaușescu. We learn about the harsh realities of life under communism, where shortages of basic goods were commonplace. The narrative takes a dramatic turn as the Romanian Revolution unfolds in December 1989, where Traian recounts the fear and uncertainty that gripped the nation as protests erupted, leading to the eventual overthrow of Nicolae Ceaușescu. I'm delighted to welcome Traian to our Cold War conversation.
I was born in 1974 in Cluj, Romania. Cluj is situated in a region called Transylvania, and I have an older brother. He was born in 1967, and my immediate family were my parents and my brother.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My parents came from a rural area close to the city. They got married very young. They were 20 or 21, and they came to Cluj. There was a lot of people from the rural area. They were invited to come to the cities for a new life, a new modern life. My parents were one of those, and they came to Cluj. And my father, he graduated military school after high school, and he worked in the National Army. He worked in the Department of Logistics and Maintenance of all kinds of tools and trucks and everything that's used in the army, guns. He worked in the maintenance department. And my mother, she was an operator, and she used to work in a post office in the rural area, in the village. And when she came to Cluj, she got hired at the newest hotel in Cluj called Napoca Hotel. And she worked in the telecommunication department, being an operator for the hotel for, 30 some years.
Wow. And I mean, with your father's job, was that quite a sought-after job, working in the army, or was he forced to do that?
No, it was his choice. I don't know why he made this choice. I don't remember talking to him about why he made this choice. I guess it was in the family. My brother, later, when he finished high school, he wanted to go to the military school. But unfortunately, he did not pass the exam. There was an exam and he did not pass. So he took another career. So I guess it was in the family.
In the West, parents would sometimes take their kids to work to show them what work was like. Did your father take you along?
Yeah, he took me once. I don't think I was in school yet. Maybe I was 5 or 6 years old. And took me to his work. Was outside. The garrison was just outside of Cluj. And I went there. I visited the warehouses. I visited his colleagues. And once even he took me into a tank. And it was very like a movie to me. Everything was so nice. And people were very friendly with me. And they gave me candies. And it was I was very proud to be able to visit the army garrison. I was very proud. And the next day in school or kindergarten, I was very, very proud.
It's obviously a really vivid memory for you and made a big impact with you. Did your mum invite you to have a look at the hotel as well?
Yes. And I liked it more. It was very interesting. I remember She, being an operator, she used to have in her office a big, like an old telephone panel with all those holes in the panel. And each hotel room had a different hole and a light bulb. And when someone called, the light would go on, like the color red. So she had to take like a pin and put it in the hole to answer the phone. And she always said, okay, you can do this for me. Help me, please. And she engaged me in maneuvering her job a little bit. So it was very, very interesting. And sometimes we listened to the conversation that the people had. She had a trick. If you put the pin not all the way into the hole, just let it loose a little bit, then you can hear what the people were talking on the other line. But we were doing it for fun, nothing else.
So this was a tourist hotel open to Western tourists?
Yes, Western and local tourists, yes.
Right.
She was hired, I think, in 1969 or 1970. So back then, foreign tourists still come to Romania. She told me she had Swedish people or German people in the hotel. Later in the 80s, foreigners would come less and less, and that was it.
My parents went to Romania in the late 80s. I think it was mostly around Bucharest, but I think they may have gone to Transylvania, but they were quite fond of travelling around Eastern Europe, which was quite unusual for British tourists in that period. Now, those sort of hotels would normally have a hard currency shop to try and get dollars and pounds and Deutschmarks from the tourists. Did your mum have access to that in any way?
Not really, officially not, but the shop was, I remember very clearly, it was on the first floor, right? You enter the hotel to the right, and her office was on the second floor. So every time I went to her work, I would pass by that foreign shop, and I saw those things over there. You could go in, especially I was a kid, so everybody knew me in the hotel. So they let me in just to look, of course. And sometimes my mom would bring like a Tic Tac, the Tic Tac box, the
Yeah, the little pill-shaped mints in a plastic box.
Or some chewing gum. She would manage to get some of those to bring us some small souvenirs, but I don't know, just a couple of times, maybe in 10 years. So not on a regular basis.
Did tourists try to trade things with the staff of the hotel? I think the Poles were quite infamous for their trading ability.
Yeah, that's how we've got our first radio cassette player. We got a radio cassette player she brought home from work, and she got it from a Polish tourist. Polish people would come to Romania and they brought goods. They could sell, I don't know, magazines or clothes, shoes, cassette players, cassettes, all kinds of things. So it was maybe 1985, I think. And my mom brought the first radio cassette player at home. So we were very, very, very proud to have something like that.
I'm trying to get a picture of what it was like in Romania in, I guess, the late 80s when the shortages really hit. Did you have a record player or anything like that at home?
We had a record player, yes, and we played vinyls and with Romanian music. And also my brother had a reel-to-reel player. Those were Russian reel-to-reel players, and that's what we had. But this new thing with the cassette player was newer and more fancy.
I guess it begs the question, were you able to get hold of music cassettes easily?
Well, not really. We used to listen to, with my father, we used to listen to Radio Free Europe in the mid to late 80s, and Voice of America, and they used to have some music shows, I think once a week or twice a week, I don't remember correctly, and we used to record music from the radio on our cassettes, and that's how we've got our music. And then we would go to school and trade cassettes and something like that, but we didn't have any cassettes with international music in stores. No.
I guess it's quite a risky undertaking in terms of a trade with a foreign tourist to get something like a cassette recorder. Was that a dangerous thing to do in that period?
Yes, it was very dangerous. And I don't know how my mom got the courage to do it. I guess a lot of people were doing it, so she got the courage finally to do something like that. It was very, very risky. People in her hotel got arrested for having inventory problems for the restaurant at the hotel, for example. I remember very, very clearly that the head of the restaurant was arrested and went to jail for a couple of years, and also the financial department manager, he also went to prison. So they were set as an example to others to make sure nothing is happening.
I imagine a hotel that caters for international tourists would have some sort of presence from the Securitate, the Romanian secret police.
I'm sure they had. My mom, I remember she told me that about some people she thought they are from Securitate, but nobody had proof or anything like that. So yeah, I'm sure they were infiltrated between the employees.
Now, we've jumped ahead a little bit in the story. Let's go back to your childhood. And because your mother and father are working, what was your daycare and kindergarten like for you?
Daycare and kindergarten, they were very close to our apartment building. We used to live in an apartment building like a lot of people did at the time. It was like a one bedroom apartment. It was with one bedroom and one living room and a kitchen. And the kindergarten was very close to the building. And there were a lot of kids from the neighborhood. We kind of knew each other from the neighborhood, from the near close buildings. And it was okay. The food was fine. We had fun over there. So I remember it was very, very nice.
So at that young age, was there already some political indoctrination going on within your education?
I don't know if indoctrination, but in kindergarten, there was this movement, like an official movement, communist movement called Șoim al Patriei, which means eagle of the homeland. And you become, in kindergarten, eagle of the homeland. It was a movement for a very young people. And I remember one day before the ceremony, my mom came home with the costume, like an orange shirt with blue pants. And the next day was the ceremony, and we got in this movement. But other than that, I don't remember. Of course, we were probably singing patriotic songs and we would recite patriotic poems for sure. But other than that, that's all I remember from kindergarten.
I'm really asking you to delve back into the depths of your memories there. But how about primary school? What are your memories there like?
Well, in primary school, a lot of people from the kindergarten, we were colleagues in primary school. We went to the same school in the same neighborhood. And it was very, very nice. The school was nice and big, clean, I would say. And I remember in the first grade, we were 3 group of classes. And 2 classes were with Romanian kids. We were about 35 in one classroom. And one classroom was for Hungarian kids. There was a large Hungarian population in Cluj still. And but we were all friends. We knew each other from the neighborhood. We had fun. We played soccer in the schoolyard. So it was very nice.
And I presume at primary school you progress from being an eagle of the homeland into something like the Pioneers or something like that?
Yeah, of course. There was another movement for a little bit older kids. It, you're right, it's called Pioneers. And it was a funny story. That was in the second grade when you are inducted in this movement. And in our class, I remember the procedure was that I don't remember who exactly, but someone from the committee would ask each individual if he or she would like to join this movement. And of course, everybody said yes. And shockingly, one colleague called Benjamin, he said, "No, I do not want to join this movement." And it was so quiet in the classroom. And he was sent back to the back of the classroom. And later we found out that he was with the religion of Pentecostal religion or something like that. And I guess they were not allowed, or he was not allowed by his parents to join. I don't know exactly the reasons, but that's what happened. It was very, very interesting, to say the least.
What was your parents' view at the time of the government? How did they feel about Ceaușescu, the communist leader, and the rest of the communists?
They were not into this movement, into the communist movement. And they said that in the 60s, I remember very clearly, in the 60s and 70s, life was good, life was better. Things were on the shelf. You could buy anything you would like. So life, my parents' life degraded, and other people's lives degraded in the 80s, mid 80s. It was already shortages were ordered by the government. So they were not very happy with the government. But they also didn't do anything against the government. So they were in line.
The 80s was this period when the communist leader of Romania, Ceaușescu, he's trying to pay off all the foreign debt that they've clocked up over the years. And by doing that, he's basically making sure that almost everything is exported.
Yes. In the mid 80s, when I was in the 5th or 6th grade, already I remember very clearly how we didn't have any electricity in the evening all the way until the morning. So I used to go to school in the afternoon from 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. But during the winter time in November, December, January, classes were made shorter with 5 or 10 minutes. And also the breaks between classes were even shorter, just to make sure we finish school by 4:30, quarter to 5, to make sure everybody can go home during daylight still. Because otherwise, if you would have stayed until 6 o'clock, it was already dark and kids would go home. It's not like today when parents are waiting for the kids at school. Everybody was going to school and from school by themselves. So, yeah, shortages were present very harshly, I would say.
And did your parents discuss this sort of stuff at home and tell you not to share that information outside the house? Did they warn you about what to say when you were outside of the home?
Yes, especially because I was the younger brother. I was a lot younger than my brother. I'm 7 years younger. So whatever it was discussed, it wasn't discussed they were not dissidents or anything. They were just unhappy with the life. But they always mentioned to me clearly to make sure I don't say anything outside the apartment, not on the stairway, not in front of the park, in front of the building, in the park, anywhere, in school. Well, so please do not talk about what we're saying at home. Yeah.
When you were at school, did you participate in any sports?
Yes. It was very nice because a lot of coaches for children would come to our school, and I think to every school in Cluj. They would recruit kids to do some sports. So every September, October, when school started, some coaches came, and I used to sign up for everything because I was playing outside already and with my friends, and they like sports a lot. So I enrolled in swimming and volleyball and football, uh, and I sticked with table tennis. And I used to play 5 or 6 years as a kid, and it was a very nice experience.
So was table tennis a big thing in Romania? A big sport?
Yeah, it was. Still is. We are pretty good at table tennis, actually, and we still are. And but back then, our hometown club, CSM Cluj, it was a well-known club in Europe. They used to win 5 Champions League trophies in the 60s. So they were. It was a very well-known club, and I used to play in this club, and I used to be coached by a little bit by Farkas Panet. He was a legend. He was a sort of consultant by then. He was, I think, in his 60s back in the 80s. And but I looked him up later, and he was a well-known champion, and he used to hold the record for the longest table tennis point in history, playing, I think, over 2 hours with a player from Czechoslovakia, I think, or I don't remember exactly against whom. But anyway, over 2 hours for 1 point. So he was a legend.
2 hours? That's unbelievable. He must be a real legend. I can't believe it. 2 hours for 1 point. I'm going to look him up straight after this call, and hopefully, well, there probably won't be a video of it, but that's a shame. But was Farkas the only coach there, or were there other coaches there working with him?
Other coaches, younger coaches, and some of them, they used to be our regular coaches. He just came in as a consultant from time to time. But the other coaches were a little bit more harsh. I don't know, the 80s style, I would say. They were very harsh. They would push us. They would hit us sometime. And it was not a very good environment to play. I remember one time we were in a tournament outside of Cluj. I don't remember where, in which city. But anyway, some colleagues of ours from Bistrica, another club in Romania, they came straight from Poland. They went to Poland for a tournament, like an experience exchange, something like this. And they came back to Romania, and we've met at this tournament in Romania. And they brought with them some goods, again, chewing gum and, candies, chocolate, stuff like that. And we went in the evening to their room to trade some things, to get something that they have. And we got caught by our trainer, and the three of us, we were three kids from the same classroom. We were colleagues in this tennis table club, and the coach got mad, and he pushed us down the stairs, and he kind of kicked my colleague a little bit, and he was a little bit abusive. And after that tournament, we quit. We said we do not want to continue. The coach came to our houses and begged our parents to let us come back, but none of the parents would allow us to go back. So it wasn't, like I said, not a very, very, very harsh environment, but a slap here and there, and different times, I would say.
What was Farkas like as a coach? It sounds like he was much kinder than the other coaches.
Yes, sure. He was very kind and very patient, and a different kind of a coach compared to this younger one. Yeah.
I understand that he gave you some money at one point to help out at home.
Yeah, he was very, very kind. One time, my mother wanted us to go visit our brother. He was in the army, like mandatory army that you had to take. And she only had money for the second class train wagon. And Mr. Panet Farkas said, okay, here's some money and you can go and buy tickets for the first class. And it was like a 5-hour train trip during the night. So he said, yeah, go first class and come back safely. And he was very nice.
He does indeed sound like a real legend in every sense of the word. With the shortages that there are in Romania in the 1980s, is there some ration card system to allocate food?
Of course. I remember because sometimes my parents were to work and I had to do, the grocery shopping. And I remember I used to have those cards with me. There was a card for bread and there was cards for flour and all kinds of groceries, oil. And at one point, I remember I lost the card for the bread and my parents were very upset about this, but they managed to solve this. I don't know how. And we managed to get by that month with some bread on the table.
It's incredible hearing what life was like in Romania during this period, because I talk a lot on this podcast about East Germany, but the hardships you were having in Romania under the Ceaușescu regime are so completely different to the East German experience.
Yeah, because I remember friends from school, a family of 4. I think I was in the 7th grade or something. And this family managed to get permission to go on vacation to Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany. And they went there for 2 or 3 weeks. And when they came back with some board games that we've never seen before in Romania. We used to have board games, but the quality of the board itself and all those pieces were so different and not such a good quality that these guys came back to Romania from East Germany, and clothes and shoes, they were like from a different world, and we enjoyed to play those board games because we used to play board games a lot. So that's where you realize that there's more outside your country.
Could you watch foreign TV in Cluj?
Yes, because Cluj is about 150 kilometers from the Hungarian border. And as kids, we used to go outside the city. We used to walk 6-7 kilometers and we used to watch football games. I remember, and there were a lot of people over there on the hills with their cars, and outside on top of the car, they used to put a small black and white TV. I don't know, very small. It was called Sport TV. It was a diagonal of, I don't know, 12 inches maybe, something like that, 15. And I used to watch the World Cup from Mexico over there with the Hungarian television because they used to broadcast all these events. So it was very, very, we liked it. Especially those things were in the summer. We were on vacation. So we used to go just to have fun and come back later at home. So it was very nice. Nice times.
Are there any of those matches that you can particularly remember watching?
Yes. The first one was Liverpool against Juventus in 1985 with that tragedy that happened in Belgium, I think, in Brussels. I remember, you can't forget that. And after that, I watched 1986 World Cup and then Champions League again, FC Porto, when they won, I don't know, in 87, I think. So Oh, and 1988 European Championships, of course, when the Netherlands won against USSR.
The 1986 World Cup, England has some very long memories, sad memories there as to how much we were robbed in that tournament with a certain Diego Maradona and his hand of God. Do you remember seeing that?
Yes, we've seen that, and I remember but nobody saw. I don't remember seeing the hand. So because maybe we were a lot of people and the TV was very small, we couldn't understand anything what the broadcaster would say because it was in Hungarian. And also I had some Hungarian friends with me, but you couldn't hear the voice of the broadcaster. So we didn't realize until later that Maradona scored with his hand.
Scored, I would say, is an exaggeration, but yeah, he certainly put the ball in the net with his hand. Does Romanian TV not show much sport then?
In the 70s, they used to show sports. The last cup from Argentina, 1978, it used to be broadcast in Romania, but beginning 82 in Spain, no, nothing. And 86, 88, not much, no. They used to cut short the program. We used to have, by mid to late 80s, we used to have 2 hours of TV per day in the evening, and it was all propaganda material. You didn't have anything else, sports or no, nothing. Even the Romanian football teams that used to play in the European Cups, they would only broadcast Steaua from time to time and Dinamo Bucharest, but not all the games, especially the ones that were outside of Romania. No, not so much.
I guess that's exacerbated by the power being switched off as well. What did you do in the evenings at home if there was no power? I guess board games is one option.
Yeah, some board games at the candlelight. The candles were very precious back then because we used to study in the candle lights and we used to play some games during using the candle lights, and we used to play outside. It was dark outside, but we used to, I don't know how, but we used to be outside a lot.
One of my favourite stories you sent through in your notes was about a friend who went to Bulgaria, and you wouldn't believe something that he experienced there.
Yes, I'm still friends with him. He's one of my best friends. And in the 80s, I think it was 1988, he went to Bulgaria with his family. He's ethnic Hungarian, actually. His name is Belo. And he came back from Bulgaria and he said that he ate an ice cream that was on a stick. And we said it's impossible for an ice cream to be on a stick because in Romania we used to only have ice cream in a cone or maybe as a sandwich between two waffles, but on a stick. In our mind back then, it was impossible because it would melt. So we called him a liar and nobody believed him.
Brilliant. Cluj seems to be quite a centre for sports, and you've got a local football club there. Did Dinamo come and play?
Yes, they used to come. They still do, actually. But they have a history. They were formed after the Second World War by the communists. And the Steaua used to be formed by the National Army of Communist Romania, and Bucharest was created by the state police. And they were not very loved in Romania, especially in our city and also in Timișoara or in all other cities when these two, and especially in the 80s, when people were fed up with the government and with the communist rule, it was a way of protesting against the government when Universitatea Cluj used to play against these two teams. And there were a lot of chants against them and a lot of incidents. Sometimes there were a lot of police involved around the stadium, in the stadium. So there was a lot of unrest during the game. People were finding courage because we were 30,000 people in the stadium, and we found courage to say and yell some things. So the matches were very, very politically, how should I say, with the image of political unrest every year.
I bet the Cluj fans looked forward to those games, having the opportunity to voice their dissent against the regime.
Exactly, because a month earlier, you could go to the stadium with no problem if you play against another team. But when those teams came, there were a lot of filters, and the police used to circle the stadium many times, and you have to pass all these filters, and it was a lot. It was very stressful from the beginning. So, but there was fun times.
Yeah, I can imagine you look back and see that time as more of a sense of community, of people being with you. And it's difficult to imagine because, we in the West, we never really experienced anything like that. I mean, we had strikes in the UK, which meant there were power cuts, but you weren't in danger of being arrested for voicing your dissent against the government or anything like that. And I think from your notes in the mid-80s, your father falls foul of the regime.
Yeah, my father, he was an alcoholic, and he couldn't keep his job properly with the National Army, and he was, I don't know, late, and he couldn't perform to standards, and he got a lot of warnings from work, and 2 times he was sent to southern Romania for forced labor when Romania was constructing a canal between the Danube River and the Black Sea. And a lot of people were sent there, along with, of course, engineers and qualified workers, but also this kind of people. My father was declared basically a parasite to society, and he was sent there for, I think, 2 times for longer periods, more than a year each time, as a correction. So yeah, that was what's happened to my father.
A while back, you talked about listening to Radio Free Europe and Voice of America for the music, but were you also listening for the news information they were providing about dissidents and that sort of thing?
Yes, of course. That was the main scope of listening. My father was especially interested, and my brother, my mom, not so much. And we used to listen to this radio, and we heard about some unrest that was happening in 1987, some workers' strike against the communist government that ended very bad for some of them. And also, we heard about people that were trying to cross the Danube River. They were swimming to Yugoslavia to escape. And yeah, we heard a lot of horror stories of what happens in Romania and with people trying to flee.
And you hear about a well-known football player who leaves Romania.
Yeah, Miodrag Belodedic was a very well-known football player. He used to play for Steaua Bucharest. He won the Champions League with Steaua in 1986. And I think in 1988, we heard on Radio Free Europe or Voice of America that he fled to Yugoslavia. He was a Serbian ethnic in Romania. He went to visit his family in Yugoslavia, and he never came back to Romania. And we were not able to see him play for the Romanian national team. And there was a lot of people were very hurt about his departure. And later, I think in 1989, Nadia Comaneci, I'm sure you heard about her. She fled in November 1989, just after the wall of Berlin fell and all, the fence in Hungary, between Hungary and Austria, opened in the summer. She fled in 1989 in November, late November, and she went to Hungary and then to Austria, and from Vienna she flew to the United States. So yeah, and people were talking about this almost openly because it was a very, very big deal. There were high profile athletes from Romania. They were very well known, not only in our country, but in Europe and in the world. So, yeah.
I mean, back with Radio Free Europe and Voice of America, what was the music you were into?
Oh, rock music, of course. 80s rock bands like Scorpions or AC/DC, and the American bands Cinderella and Motley Crue. Um, we used to listen to this music, and it was very, very nice. I liked it very much. And I remember at one point we used to, someone from Cluj, I don't know who, or from Romania, who knows, got hold of some original cassette tapes, and someone hand wrote the lyrics of the songs in a notebook, and that notebook went to someone else and someone else from hand to hand, and at one point came to our school, to us, and I copied those lyrics in my handbook and I gave to someone else. So a lot of people were into this music, and we were very interested in the lyrics. That's how we started to learn a little bit more English.
I'm presuming you've probably seen some of these bands live now, and I can imagine that must have been quite a powerful moment, because in 1989 in Romania, you would have never dreamed of seeing these people for real.
That's perfectly clear. In 1991, I was 17, and we went to Budapest, 6 of us, to the Monsters of Rock festival in Budapest. And there was AC/DC, the main band, also Metallica, Motley Crue, Queensryche, and the Black Crowes. Yes, I remember that concert. It was my first big concert. Very, very nice.
So in late 1989, you hear about the fall of the Berlin Wall through Radio Free Europe or Voice of America, but change doesn't happen in Romania until late December. And on December the 20th, 1989, you go on a school trip.
Yes. December the 20th, 1989. I was in the 10th grade. I was 16. And a trip was scheduled to go to Iași, school trip. But me and my family, we've already heard on Radio Free Europe and Voice of America that on the 15th of December, unrest started in Timișoara and got bigger and bigger and bigger every day, every evening. And by the 20th, when we left, Timișoara declared itself a free of communism city in Romania. But the school trip was scheduled. We went to the train station and off we went to our trip. And the train came from Timișoara and it went to Iași, and its nickname was back then the Famine, because of the conditions, the usual conditions that the train had. It was very cold, no heat, of course, back then, and not so clean. The toilets were terrible. So the expectations were very low, and the train did not disappoint, really, regarding its nickname.
So I presume when you left, it was the usual drill with your parents. Don't speak to anybody about what you've heard on Voice of America, and really reiterating to you the dangers of what could happen while you're away.
Yes, and my mom, even when I got out of the apartment, I remember I went down the stairs, first 5 or 6 steps, and then when I turned around, I pumped my fist like I'm going on a revolutionary trip. And my mom put her finger on her mouth and she just told me to shut up. But I was just teasing her. Of course, I didn't do anything. I was just teasing her. And that was how I left for that school trip.
Teenage rebellion. I remember it well. And you said that the train had come from Timișoara. Were there any people on board who'd come from that area?
Yes, we were, I would say now, a lot of kids. We were about at least 60 or 70 kids, I would say. 2 or 3 classes were there. And they occupied a lot of compartments and everything. But in one of the compartments, there was this quiet couple, a man and a woman. And they were very, very quiet. They didn't say anything the entire trip. The entire trip from Cluj to Iași, they didn't say a word. They looked very frightened, I think, about things that happened in Timișoara. Yeah.
How long was the train journey, and when did you arrive in Iași?
Yes, we arrived on the 20th or the 21st in the morning. And we went, of course, the scope of the field trip was to visit some museums and all kinds of school things. And we had a lot of fun. Nothing happened in Iași on the 21st, and we didn't know anything about it. But on the 22nd, we were visiting the memorial house of a Romanian writer, Ion Creangă. And while visiting his memorial house, I've heard some noise and some tents, and that a TV or a radio was very, very loud, and it was saying that Ceaușescu has left and Romania is free, and we couldn't believe it. And we went outside of the memorial house, and a lot of people on the street, or all of a sudden. So when we went in, nothing was happening, and we stayed there for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then we got out, and the news were already everywhere that Ceaușescu left. So it was very intense feeling.
And obviously, you can't communicate with your parents while you're away. There's no mobile phones or anything like that, and it would have been very difficult to make a phone call.
Yes, of course. I later found out from my mom that our teachers communicated with some parents about what's going on, that everything is okay in Iași. But on the 21st in Cluj, there were a lot of shooting, and some people were shot dead in the main square. So the revolution started a day earlier in Cluj than in Iași. So parents were calling the hotel where we were staying, and they talked a little bit about this, but I don't know how, because you couldn't say much, of course, about the events, because you didn't know who's listening to the conversation. But anyway, on the 23rd, we came home to Cluj, safe and sound. But at the train station, some buses were waiting for us. No parents were allowed to wait for us at the train station. Buses were lined up for us, and these buses will take each kid home in front of the apartment or in front of the house to go home. So we saw on our way home some bullet holes in some buildings. And it was a lot different 3 or 4 days later, our city, when we came back.
That must have been a lot of worry for your parents while you were away.
Yes. Now, back then I didn't realize, but right now I'm a parent, and I think about these kind of things, and yeah, I would be worried as hell if one of my daughters would be in the same situation. Yeah, my parents were very frightened, I think. Yeah.
Can you remember hearing the news that the Ceaușescus had been executed?
Yeah, it was a Christmas Day, if I remember correctly. It was already on our national TV. We were watching national TV. Finally, we had non-stop TV. 1 week before, we only had 2 hours. And 1 week later, we had non-stop TV. And yeah, we saw that on TV, I remember.
And how did things go for your family from the end of 1989 and the changes in government? Were they still in employment?
Yeah, well, my father, not so much because of his alcohol problems. He passed away in 1996. And the mom, she kept her job at the same hotel until she retired in 2000. She retired her job, and everything was okay regarding this. But the 90s in Romania were terrible because all these factories that were going bankrupt. Of course, they were not producing anything in the 80s, but there was a lot of problems, social and economical problems in the 90s.
How does life go for you? I mean, obviously, you got to your rock festival in Budapest.
Well, I finished high school in 1992. Then I went to the university here in Cluj. I finished civil engineering university. And in 1998, I won the visa lottery in the United States. There was this program that we didn't know. I didn't know about it, but my girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now, but my girlfriend met a guy on the street that she hasn't met in decades. And he said to her, "Did you hear about this program with the visa lottery in the United States?" And my wife said, "No." "Well, you should play. You should play. Please play." "No, I don't want to play. I don't want to go anywhere. It's fine. It's okay." And then 2 weeks later, they met again. And okay, I met you again. Did you play? "No, no. Please, please. Only all you have to do is just write on a piece of paper the name, date of birth, some information about you. You send it by mail, and who knows? Maybe you win." And then my Augusta, who's my wife now, she said, "Okay, I keep meeting this guy, and let's do it. Let's do it." I said, "No, I don't want to go anywhere. If you want to do it, fine. I'm not interested." So she filled out this information for both of us separately. And 6 months later, I received an envelope in the mail that I won. So in 2000, we got married and off we went to the United States. Very interesting.
Wow. Wow. And you returned in 2008. What was the pull to make you come back?
Yes, we've stayed in the United States for 8 years. That's correct. And but we wanted to go there just to try to see how things are, and it was very easy winning that lottery. Um, but we always wanted to come back, and we had our first daughter in 2005. And then when my wife got pregnant with the second daughter in 2008, we decided, okay, now it's time, because if they grow a little bit older, they make friends, they adjust to this civilization, and it's going to be very, very hard for us to go as they grow older, to go back to Romania. The experience in the United States was very, very nice. We made a lot of friends, and we've met unbelievable people. They helped us, they gave us things where we didn't have anything. So a very, very nice experience socially and also professionally. But we wanted to come back because of our family. We missed our family, we missed our friends, and we decided to come back in 2008.
And when you speak to your two daughters about your experience in Ceaușescu's Romania, what's their reaction to those stories? Is it, oh no, here goes Dad again telling us about life in Romania in the bad old days? Or are they interested in hearing about your experiences?
Not so much, honestly, especially the older one. I guess there's the personality of each one. The older one is like exactly you said, here you go again, Dad, stop it. But the younger one, Rada, she is a little bit more, she listens a little bit more, and she gets wow, really? That was happening? Oh my God, my grandfather happened this to him, and she is a little bit more interested, but she's not very influenced by our experience.
Yeah, well, maybe when they hear that you're a podcast star on Cold War Conversations, that will pique their interest. Who knows? Traian, I'm really grateful for you coming on Cold War Conversations. That's an amazing story you shared with me.
Thank you very much. I really wanted to do this, especially because you didn't have too many people from Romania. So maybe this story tells a story many people from Romania of my age, to say the least. So I'm really glad that you invited me, and congratulate you for what you're doing with this podcast. It's amazing. I've listened to hundreds of episodes of yours, and they're very, very cool.
That's really, really kind of you to say. But I mean, the podcast is about people like you. It's a pleasure to capture your story and other people's stories and share it with a wider audience. But you know, those are very kind words you said there. The episode extras, such as videos, photos and other content, are available via a link in the episode information. The podcast wouldn't exist without the generous efforts of our financial supporters, and I'd like to thank one and all of them for keeping the podcast on the road. The Cold War Conversation continues in our Facebook discussion group. Just search for Cold War Conversations in Facebook. Thanks very much for listening, and look forward to seeing you next week.